Look, I got to get this out of the way right up front. There's going to be some brutal realities we're going to address on these rankings, so any snowflakes might want to sit in the back, just so you're warned, because we're getting into the top 30 wide receiver rankings for Week 12, and we're being completely honest and upfront. But I'm doing everything I can to help us win Week 12 and a championship, so make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, getting into our first tier, it's very exclusive, and this shouldn't come out of the ordinary. Jackson Smith-Njigba at 1, Puka Nacua at 2. JSN's got the matchup this week at Tennessee. The guy is a lock to get 100 receiving yards on a per-game basis. Expect Sam Darnold to have a bounce-back game. Puka Nacua at number 2. This is Sunday Night Football, which makes me believe that Tampa will bring their best. However, I don't think it's going to be enough to stop the Rams' passing offense because it's been dominant. Matt Stafford's an MVP candidate, Puka Nacua has been playing great, and Devontae Adams maybe gets another week healthier, and Tampa's defense already can be beaten through the air. Dropping down to our next tier, it's a big tier because I think a lot of wide receivers belong in this because I'm starting to see a blurred line, and this is where we get into some harder realities. So I've got Rashee Rice at the top of the tier, followed by Amon-Ra St. Brown. When it comes to Rashee Rice, so he's taking on the Indianapolis Colts, who are coming off a bye week, but it's back in Kansas City. So they're in a must-win situation. And even in Rashee Rice's bad week last week, he was still targeted a bunch. He still is the favorite target of this offense, maybe outside of Travis Kelce in certain weeks, but the bottom line is Travis Kelce can't do that every single week. I expect Rashee Rice to find the end zone again in this game and get 100-plus yards receiving in all likelihood. Amon-Ra St. Brown versus the New York Giants. This matchup is great, and the bottom line is you want Detroit Lions options off of a bye week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, last 2 games, I will say, with Dan Campbell calling the plays, been a little concerning. It has been a little concerning because of the fact that they're targeting him a bunch, but it hasn't been working. So I do think a lot of that had to do with Philadelphia's brutal pass rush, and it probably will not come to light again against the Giants this week. Nico Collins, he belongs here in the top 5, and Emeka Egbuka is at 6. So when it comes to Nico, right? Nico, this one hurts me personally because I told this story before. I traded Nico Collins away in a Dynasty League a couple weeks ago to maximize my playoff window this year, and I got Derrick Henry, DJ Moore, and a second-round pick for next year. This is a problem for me because Nico has done nothing but do top 5, top 8 finishes since his quarterback was Davis Mills. Like, that's just crazy, and Davis Mills is again on Thursday night versus the Bills. So if you just look at Nico with Davis Mills, he's getting targeted like crazy, and he's getting 100-plus receiving yards. We all know Nico's a great player. It just wasn't working with C.J. Stroud for whatever reason. Bottom line is right now, Nico Collins with Davis Mills is elite. Emeka Egbuka at 6 at the Los Angeles Rams. Like I said, I do expect the Bucs to bring their best in this game. However, I do think that there's going to be some shortcomings here for Tampa's offense. Number 1, that pass rush is really good, and Baker has been a little under duress lately. Number 2, that defensive backfield has gotten better since the trade deadline. So I do kind of wonder what's the ceiling going to be like for Emeka Egbuka. Actually, it's not necessarily what's the ceiling going to look like. It's how likely is he to hit the ceiling. Because the reason he's here at 6 is because we know the ceiling is great. But I do wonder about how likely it is that he will hit his ceiling. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are at number 7 and 8. And listen, I actually flipped these guys. That's what we're discussing here. Hard reality is George Pickens has been awesome. And this has been a knock on me because that was one of my worst calls in the preseason. I said that he was a bust pick and you should not draft him. Look at that. I mean, I got something really, really wrong. It happens, man. That's what we go live on Monday nights for what I got right and wrong. I was really wrong about Pickens, but I will say this. Pickens has been great. CeeDee Lamb, they are still feeding him the ball, though. Now, the thing with CeeDee is he's dropped some passes this year, and I just think that Pickens has been so dominant on a, yards after catch basis, and he's just been really good with every target he's gotten. I'm starting to favor Pickens over CeeDee. Now, I will say this, they're both great, but this matchup is really tough against the Philadelphia Eagles, whose defense looks absolutely fantastic right now. And then Davante Adams at number 9 to round out this tier. So he's taking on the Bucs. And like I said with Puka, this is a matchup I think that they can take advantage of. The problem is Davante Adams got 8 targets last week, only caught one of them right at the end zone. So this was my concern heading into last week, which is if he's not fully healthy, I expect him to get the red zone usage like he did, but I don't expect him to get a ton of over the field, over the middle usage. And maybe they were trying to do that a bunch, and maybe I just missed some of it, but it did not look like Davante Adams could do very well over the middle of the field. So that is my one concern with Davante Adams heading into this week, is how likely is it that he's going to come back fully healthy, or even 90% of what he was before the injury. That's why I've got to mitigate the risk at 9, but clearly the guy is a almost touchdown lock at the wide receiver position on a weekly basis. But I want to go back to these Dallas wide receivers, because to me personally, I'm ready to make that switch. George Pickens, I think, has a higher ceiling than CeeDee Lamb. We just haven't seen much from CeeDee from a ceiling perspective. Not doubting that he can't, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to go to our site on fsroundup.com, and I'm going to start a start-sit poll. I'm going to look up George Pickens, align him with CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to go to chat on George Pickens, then go to start a poll for week 12, then line him up with CeeDee Lamb. Go give me a vote on this one. Let me know what you think. Obviously, in every situation, you'd start both if you had them, but if you only had to pick one, who do you prefer, maybe even rest of season? Log that into your vote as well. It's completely free to vote, completely free to start your own poll. And if you want access to the automatic waiver tool, which is saving people's teams this year from destruction and helping you get the best guys after waiver priorities run through, and you want access to my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis, the comparison feature and league sync up feature, that is with the premium subscription. And if you just want a full team breakdown from me with personalized advice, trade ideas, waiver ideas, how to make your team win a chip this year, you can also do a team breakdown from me as well. Dropping down to our next tier right here. Odunze is at number 10, and we've got Boutte and McMillan making his breakout appearance in the top 12. So when it comes to Odunze, right, he's taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and to me, the matchup is so awesome that I'm willing to live with these weeks where he doesn't do as well, right? Because I would say that his floor lately has been about 5 to 6 fantasy points. So obviously, he can kind of crush you in a way, but there is still that ceiling that I do expect Rome to hit in certain matchups, because Chicago's offense, they've got so many weapons and they maximize matchups. And that's the beauty of having Ben Johnson as that head coach / OC, is he recognizes that stuff. So to me personally, I think Rome is going to be a great play. Boutte and McMillan, I also think is going to be a great play too. Not saying that he's going to do it again like he did last week, right? Like he just had a massive game of his career against the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not saying he'll repeat that. I don't believe he will, because it's hard to predict when Bryce Young's actually going to play well. But I will say this matchup offers a lot of upside. At San Francisco, this defense has been awful. The one concern I truly have is already how inconsistent Bryce is. But with this primetime game, Carolina's not usually on primetime. Usually anyone outside of their local area doesn't really care to watch the Panthers. So I kind of wonder, what is their team going to look like with a national spotlight on them? And that's kind of why I don't have them higher. Because honestly, if I expected better, I would have them higher on this list, because the matchup, again, is theoretically pretty freaking awesome. Michael Pittman Jr. is at 12, and Jameson Williams made it to top 13. That's the reality, man. Michael Pittman Jr. at Kansas City, I do not love this matchup. A lot of people probably will argue with me, why is he not higher? Look, I've been discussing this with Michael Pittman Jr. over the entire season. The problem I have with the guy is that if you look at him on a game-long perspective, he's always had a low floor that's bubbled underneath the surface, and it's been kind of subterranean. You never really pay attention to it until it happens, because sometimes his target share completely goes away. And this is a game I do worry about Daniel Jones. Off of a bye week, good for them, but it's in Kansas City. This is a must-win game for the Chiefs. I expect the Chiefs to do very well, so I've got to have him in the top 12 because of how good he's been and because of how efficient the offense has been, but I do have my issues with this game. Jameson Williams at 13. Listen, Dan Campbell loves him some Jameson Williams. If you look at the 2 games with Dan Campbell as play caller, he has been a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. Bottom line, end of story. This matchup, Christian Watson just took advantage of this defense over the top. I expect the same thing. And I already said this with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'll reiterate how much you want Lions players off of a bad loss. And that's exactly what they're coming off of. They're going to absolutely romp the Giants in this game. So I definitely want a piece of this offense any way I can get it. And the bottom line is, I'm not reaching on this ranking. This is where he belongs this week. T. Higgins also belongs here at number 14 and Chris Olave at 15. A lot of people probably argue with me on this one as well. Why isn't T. Higgins higher? Listen, the Patriots defense has done very well, and I've got news for you. You know how I like to talk about cornerbacks with wide receivers, right? Well, we've got a new corner that really is making his mark this year when he's been healthy. And that's Christian Gonzalez. And he was good last year, but he wasn't healthy very much, and he was on a bad team. This year, everything's lining up. Been more healthy than last year on a much better team with a much better defense to surround him. I do worry about this. Without Jamar Chase, yes, in theory, T. Higgins gets a ton of targets. But I'm telling you right now, Christian Watson will follow T around all game. That's why he's not as high in the rankings this week. Chris Olave at 15 versus Atlanta. I think off of the bye week, it definitely benefits them. And listen, Tyler Shough, I've been very tough on the guy. Like, everybody knows this. But I do believe what I saw from him before the bye week actually was a little encouraging. He did show arm talent that I didn't really realize he had until I saw that. Like, he played at Texas Tech for a year. I knew the guy had talent, but it had been a while. So, watching him play, I do think there's upside, and I do think there's upside with Chris Olave versus Atlanta. Listen, I'm just not comfortable putting him much higher than this because I know the Saints, they can go in the tubes. So I can't put him much higher than this, but I do love the upside. Dropping down to our next tier, here he lands. I mean, this is just our big elephant in the room. Like, he's the big zit on your face that nobody will acknowledge. The big mole, the big zit. Justin Jefferson, this is a conversation that we just have to have. I get it. He's a great player in the NFL. And actually, I've been very impressed watching him just handle himself. Like, you can clearly tell he's frustrated, but he's keeping everything internalized. He's still doing his job out there. He's running his routes well. He's not just quitting on the team. I've got a lot of admiration for the guy. J.J. McCarthy is just terrible at football. Like, he's bad, and it's not getting better. I mean, it's at a point where Minnesota do or die for playoffs. Well, he feels that pressure. It's against Green Bay's defense. They've been very good. And I just don't trust that Justin Jefferson is able to give you 17 points this week. That's usually why he's higher, because I'm like, yeah, I think in every week he could probably give you that ceiling, which has been 17 points. I don't see it this week. I think that his point total will be anywhere from like 7 to 12 points. And that's why he belongs here in this tier at number 16. Michael Wilson is at 17, and Ricky Pearsall is at 18. So when it comes to Michael Wilson, the guy, I clearly was wrong about him last week. The guy dominated, and I did not think that he would be a beneficiary of this Marvin Harrison Jr. absence. I thought that a lot of it was going to go to Trey McBride, and it did. But they ended up throwing the ball so freaking much because they were trailing in that game that it mattered. Now, here's the reason I don't have him ranked higher. Because Marvin, he's missing the game again if you have not seen it this morning. Michael Wilson, though, against Jacksonville, I kind of think it'll be a little bit more of a competitive game. Jacksonville traveling to the West Coast probably does better for the Cardinals in this matchup. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a closer matchup that we'll have to watch for. And Michael Wilson probably doesn't dominate in targets like he did last week, but he probably ends up with a solid 8 to 9 targets in this game for a top 17, top 20 finish. Ricky Pearsall, I'm not wavering off this one just yet. Listen, this is very common. A player comes back from a long-term injury, and they're eased into the offense. So there wasn't that many targets. There wasn't that many opportunities coming his way. But if you look at our site on FS Roundup, you'll see that he was in there on basically every snap, right alongside Jawan Jennings. So he didn't leave the field. And this is important stuff to know on our site. It's all free, and it tells you what these teams are planning to do. You have a consistent target snap share of that amount, you're going to be involved moving forward. It was a work back week. It's against the Panthers this week on Monday night. I can see Ricky Pearsall having a big one, but of course, got to really get missed a little bit by having him here at 18. Zay Flowers is at 19 to round us out. Look, here's the thing with Zay. Zay Flowers, I've been discussing the breakout potential, and I think that's the wrong angle to look at this one from. I still do believe it's there, but Zay Flowers, if you just look at the game log, like, he has not hurt your team. He has not been a guy that is just getting like 2 points or like 5 points and then sometimes give you 17. Like, that's not Zay. Zay has actually stabilized to become a really solid flex play. Like, he's getting you a consistent 12 to 14 points in full PPR. And sometimes he gives you 10. Like, Zay has been a solid play. So against the Jets this week, I see the upside. And at this point, I'm really trustworthy of his floor to do good enough. And when you look at the guys in the next tier, you'll see the lack of trust that I have. Dropping down to that next tier, Stephon Diggs is at 20 and Devonta Smith is at 21. So with Diggs here, it's a great matchup. My problem is not the matchup in this one. I've got no issue going up against the Bengals. In fact, I'd like to take advantage of it. But the problem is, if Kayshon Boutte comes back this week, which I'm projecting he will, that's when things go awry. Because just don't forget, like, what we've seen with Kayshon Boutte is when he's there, Stephon Diggs and him, they go on these streaks where sometimes Boutte gets the work and it's downfield, and then other times, if Diggs gets targets, it's all short distance. Listen, I think Diggs probably is the guy that I would want most if Boutte is back. But I cannot commit to him in many higher tiers above this. The reason ultimately he's here is because of the matchup. Devonta Smith at 21 at Dallas. Matchup is great. Again, this is not a matchup thing. This is purely a trust thing, because we took 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I mean, Devonta Smith just did basically nothing. And I think that Philadelphia is going through this weird time right now, right? Like, I don't know how this offensive coordinator makes it through the offseason with this team. This team is so bad offensively. It's like a kid calling plays on Madden. I mean, I just think that when you look at their offense, they're trying to appease A.J. Brown, but they also know he's a great player, so they're trying to give him targets, and it's just not working. Devonta Smith sometimes gets left in the dust because of that. So I can't trust Devonta Smith to always lead the team in targets, but I still do trust him in fantasy more than I trust A.J. Brown. Brian Thomas Jr., I'm projecting him to return this week, and he's at 22. And then DK Metcalf is at 23 to round out the tier. Brian Thomas Jr. at Arizona, like I said, I do think this could be more of a competitive matchup. And the way I look at these two in particular is that if I'm deciding who I'm going to play, I'm going to play the guy that I believe has big play upside. And listen, I think DK does, but the bottom line is that DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers have just not looked good. Now, the irony is I'm not projecting Aaron Rodgers to play in this game. I actually think it will be Rudolph. But the bottom line is that DK Metcalf, even when he's getting targets, he doesn't catch everything. Because I've got news for you, and I've been saying this all year. He's not a contested catch receiver, and he drops the ball a lot. DK Metcalf has just been subpar. End of story. Bottom line. Even in a good matchup, which I think Chicago could be, I don't trust DK Metcalf enough to even have him over Brian Thomas Jr. coming off of injury. That says a lot. Let that sink in right there. Dropping down to our next tier. Alec Pierce is at 24. He belongs here. And Christian Watson's at 25. Honestly, Alec Pierce might be too low. He really would. If he was playing a better matchup this week, he'd be at least in the tier above him. This is completely a matchup thing, though. Like I said, I worry about mostly Daniel Jones in this game versus Kansas City. I do think that Kansas City's defense will make Daniel Jones potentially look like the Giants version of himself. And I think that hurts every wide receiver. But if everything runs as smoothly as it has been, this is too low of a ranking. So I do find myself in this middle ground where I'm like, I don't want to fully commit to the idea that Daniel Jones turns into a werewolf again, but I also don't want to overcommit and say, yes, Daniel Jones is going to slice up the Chiefs and Alec Pierce should be higher than this. I'm in this middling ground right here. I've got to mitigate the risk a little bit, but I still believe he belongs inside the top 25 based on his production this year. Christian Watson at 25. Versus Minnesota, and Romeo Doubs right here behind him. Order these guys how you want to. Here's the reason this week I actually worry about Watson. Because Minnesota's defense, that's not the Giants' defense. Minnesota's defense is for real. Their problem has been offensively. But the bottom line is you can't really get over the top as easily on the Vikings as you can against the Giants. And Watson has never been and probably won't ever be a full possession receiver like Doubs is. And that's the reason I think Doubs could be ranked over Watson if you really wanted to. I do think that without Josh Jacobs this week, there probably is more of an emphasis on the passing game. So I do think either one of these guys could have upside, but I'm not going to commit to either one because I do still think that there's too many things going on with this Jordan Love situation and the pass catching options that are there. Dropping down to our last tier, A.J. Brown is at 27 and Kayshon Boutte is at 28. A.J. Brown, matchup is great. I mean, that's the reason he's here, including a couple of bye weeks from key wide receivers that we're going to miss this week. That's the reason A.J. Brown's here. Because I don't trust him, and I don't think that he really wants to play for this team. Even in good matchups, it's like, when is he actually going to want to play? It's just, there's just too many issues and too much of a inconsistency for me to really want to commit to play A.J. Brown. So I've got to have him here at 27. I can't have him much higher than this. Kayshon Boutte at 28. At Cincinnati, the matchup is great. Again, it's just coming down to, does he play or not? And if he does play, how much do they actually offer him? I do think he'll probably remain his normal role. Like, I do think he's just never been like a big target guy this year. So you don't have to worry about, like, is he going to get 10 targets or 5? If anything, he'll get 5 or he'll get 1. Like, that's kind of where we're at with Kayshon Boutte. He's always been more of a downfield player for this team this year. And I do think he will resume that role upon arrival here. So if he plays, I do think he belongs inside the top 30 as they play this week. Jakobi Meyers at 29 and Khalil Shakir's at 30. So Jakobi Meyers at Arizona, if Brian Thomas Jr. comes back this week, that's where he belongs. I do think that it's a matchup that can be taken advantage of, and I do think that Jakobi Meyers will sustain a role as a steady target guy, probably pushing out Boutte and Brown and Parker Washington out of relevancy in those types of roles. So I do think just from a target perspective, he probably belongs in the top 30. And then Khalil Shakir at Houston tomorrow night. This matchup is brutal, but I will say this. I'm not turned off necessarily. I mean, it sucked, obviously, but I'm not turned off for future weeks because of last week for Khalil Shakir. I mean, in theory, it should have been a much better day considering Josh Allen had 6 total touchdowns. Listen, he's just not a really great downfield player. He's more of a possession type of player. So this matchup, in theory, could play to him because Houston, they're not going to let things happen over the top. Or if they do, it'll be at a minimum. So I think Khalil Shakir probably has PPR upside in this game. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the full top 12 kicker rankings for this week, click on this video right here.